everybody, and welcome to the new extended Wednesday posting on Facebook and podcast that no doubt, hopefully, you're going to see. Wednesday edition of the Court of Public Opinion. Peter Clayton, as always, behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Welcome. Do you know any Greek, Pete?
Ευχαριστώ.
I know Manos Hadjidakis.
Ευχαριστώ is thank you. That's about all I know.
Happy Greek Easter. You wouldn't know how to say that.
No.
No, I don't either. But anyway, happy Greek Easter, or Orthodox Easter. May the 4th, I think, is the official. But celebration goes on for a week or something. But anyway, may the 4th be with you, as they say. I wonder what Manos Hadjidakis, I think he did, was it All Alone Am I, or was it Never on Sunday? No, yeah. I'll find out and let you know next week. No, Friday, when we're doing our live streaming show at the dining room table. JeremyCordeaux.com, which I hope you'll join us for. Keegan Payne. Great name, actually. Keegan Payne. He's a very happy man, young man, he's only 19, lives in Katherine in the Northern Territory, and he loves fishing. It turns out that he's just won $1 million for catching a tagged barramundi who had been happily swimming around since he was turned loose 9 years ago with a tag. So anyone who caught the tagged barramundi with the $1 million tag, well, gee, I don't know how long a barramundi lives, but probably, like all of us, grateful for every day. Anyway, people have been trying to nail that fish for 9 years for that $1 million, I'm told. Could have been anywhere, of course. But I reckon he should have just taken well, what would I know about fishing? I don't go fishing. But I reckon he should have taken the tag off the fish, grabbed the check, and put the fish back in the water. Yes. That would have been the least he could do. Well, maybe he did. Maybe he did. We're recording Wednesday's program on Tuesday, so it might have made the television news, and it could have had a happy ending even for the barramundi, I'm not sure. Meals on Wheels is 70 years old. Happy birthday. Started here in Adelaide. I want to try and do something on Meals on Wheels on Friday, because that, as a South Australian idea, has gone throughout the world. You know, sometimes bad things spread, but then again, sometimes really good things spread. There's a new Johnny Cash single. Pete, did you know that?
I did not, no.
Well, you know how they did that Beatles last single, because they found on a cassette, little tiny cassette, which is a little tiny magnetic tape, no quality whatsoever. But because of AI, they were able to take the remnants of a song that the Beatles didn't even like, but never really properly recorded, dress it up and pass it on. The same thing's happened with Johnny Cash. It's called Well, All Right. Now, I don't know, maybe, Pete, we can find it on the internet somewhere.
We can try, yes.
We can try. Well, All Right, it's called. And it must have been done, not perhaps in the Sun Music days, but probably about the middle of his career, I would think, because his voice is strong. Now they're going to release an entire album. This entire new Johnny Cash album will follow in a few months. He's been dead for 20 years. It's amazing what they can do. But with AI, I mean, maybe they just copied his voice and somebody else is doing it. I have no idea. Anyway, I'm just really looking forward to another Johnny Cash song. A vaccination breakthrough, which, if you haven't heard, I've got to get more information on this. It's from the very illustrious Peter Doherty Institute. Now, this involves one needle One needle. Just one flu needle to cover you and me for life. Now that would be amazing. Anyway, as I say, more to come. You'll no doubt hear more about that. I don't know what it is about aviation in Australia, but we don't seem to be able to support a third airline. Well, not for long. Yesterday I heard that Bonza, a funny name for an airline, Bonza, anyway, they've cancelled all their flights, left a whole lot of people in the lurch and short of cash, and announced that they were having talks to determine the future of the airline. Oh well. Later on in the day, I heard that venture capitalists in America, these are the people who finance the purchase of their planes, or the leasing of their planes, have apparently seized all of the aeroplanes. Whoops. Whoops! That must be because of, I don't know, maybe they didn't make a payment or something, I don't know. But cast your mind back. I was trying to think of all of the airlines that had gone through the hoop, if that's the right expression. There was Compass. I remember Compass. There was Butler Airways years ago. Then along came Compass, then along came Impulse. Southern Cross came along, I think, when Impulse folded. Of course, Ansett folded, but that was a mainstream, one of the big two. It was TAA and Ansett, and that's what it was for years. There was East West. Tiger was another one, wasn't it? Don't know what happened to Tiger. Disappeared. There was another one called Ozjet, but that was sort of like a executive VIP thing, I think. Rex is obviously still going, but I think mostly to regional areas. And anyway, as I say, I don't know what it is about Australia. With 27 million people, we should be able to support and have these airlines competing and forcing down the cost of a seat. It just doesn't seem to work like that. It's highly capital intensive, of course. It's 30 years since the end of apartheid in South Africa. Now, we thought it was gone. Apartheid, I mean, from our lives. But then along came The Voice. Well, the referendum fixed that, but we're starting to see them pop up in various state arenas, state government arenas. The Voice and various woke governments. Now, whether you divide black from white or white from black, doesn't matter. Certainly doesn't matter to me. It's still apartheid. Let's not have this nonsense. Treat everyone the same. We have, I read yesterday, produced the most troubled generation in our history. In fact, the story was headed up with the headline, the zombie generation. I mean, I'm used to the baby boomers and the ZX and all of the other designations. I've never quite understood any designation except the baby boomers, which is the one I fit into. But generation of zombies? The misuse of social media, which should be a blessing, but it can be anti-social media if people turn it into that. The ubiquitous mobile telephone. Speaking of the mobile telephone, I'm trying very hard to get this bloke for Friday morning. His name is Alex Lakos. That might even be Greek. Alex Lakos, he has made a documentary, a very interesting documentary called Disconnect Me. And what he did was to go without his mobile phone. All right, no, it's, probably not Citizen Kane. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But it's an interesting social experiment. To make a movie of it, people are saying good things about it, to be disconnected from the phone for a whole month. Anyway, as I say, I put several calls in. Well, maybe he's still disconnected. Pete, how do you connect with somebody who's disconnected?
Well, you have to knock on his door, I guess.
Not exactly practical. I don't know where he is. Anyway, I'm doing the best I can. But communicating, these kids, they can't communicate, they can't talk, they can't relate. I don't know if you can blame all of this on the mobile phone. They have trouble focusing. Now, the world is full of unintended consequences. I'm sure that the people who came up with the greatest conversation piece in the world, which is the telephone, in whatever form, never meant for it to be harmful. No, we've turned it into that. You see, you can use a knife productively, creatively. A knife is very useful. It can also be used to hurt and to harm. A knife is dangerous. Same with mobile telephones and social media and the internet. Depends on how we use it. Maybe kids should be just given that great opportunity to be taught how to use these wonderful tools. In school, a return to discipline. That was a good thing to hear about. They want to put, well, desks in a row. They want to teach kids how to line up. What have they been doing? This is what happened when I was at school. Put the desks in a row. Well, where the hell were they? Learn how to line up quietly, no talking, no mobile telephones. This is the recommendation of the Education Research Institute, which I would call what they're advocating normal classroom behaviour. But of course, all of this was derailed by the lefties. None of their classroom crap ever worked. You know, when we had kids who could read and write. Kids had copybooks and they worked on trying to emulate a copper plate sort of writing, neat and tidy, legible. And they sounded out words, which meant they were able to work these things out. But, oh, no, that wasn't it. God, it worked. Let's get rid of that. None of their crap worked. And of course it never will. It's good to see that they are trying to put some common sense back into the classroom, along with some discipline. I think they should put the cane back as well. Because they knew, in most of the classrooms, there were a couple that I was in where it was used on me, but it was mostly good enough to just have the cane on the top of the blackboard. It was an ever-constant reminder of discipline. You've got to grow up with discipline, because then you've got to start imposing self-discipline, which is even harder. 73 million we, or the South Australian Malinowskis government, has spent on cake and circuses of late. It's a lot of money. Live golf and all the other things. It's all fine. But what about the real issues? Ramping, education, hospitals. We'll come back to that a little bit later. But Adelaide, we sure do know how to put on an event. We are very good at it. The city is just absolutely the right size for a big party, because everyone comes. It's true. Tesla have just chalked up 13 fatal crashes in America. Have you seen those ads? LG and LG Solex ads? Well, they're not exactly ads. They're warnings. You know, warnings, danger, danger. Things like, you know, if you have checked that you don't have these batteries, go and check again. And I don't know, are they still selling these things, Pete? Do you know whether they are?
No, I don't, Jeremy.
Extraordinary. You'd have thought there'd have been checks and balances before these things could have got onto the market if they were so deadly. I don't think we can gild the lily. A lot of people try to do that, you know, dress things up, make them look better. Watching 7:30, it's obvious that religion is a problem. I'm not saying it's the problem, but it's a problem. And not only extremists. I'm not talking about extremists only. Well, yes, it is for extremists, but the whole thing. All religion is open to interpretation. Some religions open to love. Others open to hatred, superstition, fear. Some have disciples, some have assassins. Your heart has to go out to the parents of this 16-year-old kid, this would-be killer from the southwest of Sydney. His motive, as with just about every atrocity involving Islam, is hatred of non-believers. The hate is writ large. Great question is, how did it get there? We've got to find a way to assure Australians that people with even the potential to hate to this degree, religious hatred or otherwise, any hatred, we have to make sure that somehow they're not allowed in. Surely Islam Australia could denounce, they could reject jihad, they could reject hatred of Christians, Jews, hatred of the Western world. The imams and the muftis could do this. Why don't they? Why don't they? How could it be that these lovely people from Western Sydney did not know what was going on under their roof? I'm trying to get a couple of videos to show you in our new elongated Wednesday edition of the Court of Public Opinion. Harry, who's a viewer, has sent me a couple of things. I've just got to figure out a way. Well, actually, Pete has to, because I'm a dinosaur. I'm never going to figure it out. But it came through on WhatsApp, or they came through on WhatsApp, and we've got to somehow get them through onto a, what did you tell me, an MP3?
MP4 file.
MP4 file.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to work on that, and if we can do that before we go to air tomorrow, which is a bit doubtful, but perhaps I can get it ready for next week. Anyway, we'll see. It's worth waiting for. I think they're quite enlightening, these two videos. This Iranian guy who has been arrested in Western Australia is alleged to have committed a very serious crime. The pictures are horrendous. What this guy did in a home invasion, masquerading as a police officer, he and a woman. I don't know where the woman came from, but they both had badges and managed to con their way into this elderly couple's home, where they stole a great deal of money, valuables, and mercilessly beat these people up. Elderly people. Serious crime. This guy, released by the High Court. Yep, he was one of those among the 149 paedophiles, rapists, murderers, and assassins. I'm sure you'll remember. I'm assuming that they were released in the interests of our country. Or was it simply the law? Seriously? Seriously? I think the court should be held totally responsible. And if that puts me in contempt of court, I will wear that as a badge of honour. They may know the law, these people. But what they did was reckless and dangerous. And there are others in this criminal cohort still on our streets, with maybe more to be released. Courtesy of the High Court of Australia, if you can believe that, and an incompetent government who should have taken the advice of the Attorney General's Department and prepared legislation in advance of that High Court decision. They had time, they had warning. They could have even done something retrospectively. Anyway, last weekend the Palestinian crowds, the protesters, they were in town, a lot of them. By in town I mean in the square mile. Lots of people protesting on behalf of Palestinians. The people trying to save the Crown and Anchor. We talked about the Crown and Anchor last Friday. It's a lovely old heritage listed pub. Is it Grenfell Street?
I think so.
I think it's Grenfell Street. One of very old pub. And of course there was the domestic violence demonstrators as well. I thought Victoria was the protest capital of the world. You could not move in this city last Sunday. It was crazy. These domestic violence figures, which I'm sure you've seen, frightening, terrible, 27 women killed since the start of the year, 12 more than last year. Now that's one woman killed every 4 days. Domestic violence, it's usually by a present or past lover or partner, as they tend to call them these days. Police called out hundreds, if not thousands of times a day across this country, endless domestic violence emergencies. Must be so difficult for the police. Must be terrible. What is the cause? Jealousy, drugs, alcohol, men who believe it is their cultural right. There are, of course, some women who are perpetrators. Not many, I can't believe, but there are some, they tell me. Kids grow up witnessing all of this and then do it themselves. Sort of monkey see, monkey do. So what's the answer? Another Royal Commission? I don't think that's the answer. AVOs don't seem to do anything. They're pretty useless. Somebody can even be arrested for the criminal assault of his wife or partner. He's out on bail, and it has happened that on bail he has gone back and killed that person.
I tried to look up. I was keen to work out the ethnicity of these people to see whether the problem is how much is cultural,
Yeah.
how much is poverty driven. You can't get any information about ethnicity, culture.
No.
Nothing is said.
No, there is the inescapable truth that Aboriginal people, families, Aboriginal women are numerically more the victim of domestic crime than any other group in the country. It's something like 10 times. But it doesn't get reported because that would be seen to be racist.
That's right, and honour killings in the Muslim world. I want to know what percentage of these murders fall into those categories.
Yes.
When you say, what can we do about it, once you know the facts, you can put your energy into fixing the situation.
Well, I don't know what you do. You'd imagine to get an AVO would be of some use, some protection, but it appears not to be. What about monitored ankle bracelets? And there, if they're doing that properly, that person, presumably, if he went within, I don't know, 5 miles of the person who has taken out the AVO, there'd be an alarm that would ring somewhere, and they'd come and get him. But AVOs don't seem to be of any use at all. But the biggest problem really in Australia is the Aboriginal community. And I don't know how you handle that, because that's sort of seen as being cultural, and people don't go there. They don't want to even talk about it. You don't hear the media talking about it. Today, Anthony Albanese convened a meeting of the National Cabinet. This was the group of leaders that was put together during COVID. Leaders from all over the country to discuss this crisis. Well, we'll see what comes of it. I don't know. I really don't. The inflation figures, we should mention that, for the last quarter, up 1%. That's for the first 3 months of the year. That's the January, February, March quarter. And I think it probably tells us that there will be no interest rate cut this year. I was saying, and I thought up until these came out, these figures, that we would get 1 cut before Christmas. Some were saying we'd get 3 or 4 cuts. I don't think it's possible anyway, because inflation has got to be controlled, got to be brought down to 2%. All I can say anyway is that interest rates, and I know it's not a popular thing to say, but interest rates are at historic lows anyway. And I know that if you were to, turn the clock back a little while and you were looking at 0.1% when you went to borrow some money, I mean, they are very low. So when you're looking at 4%, you think it's very high. Well, it's not. You've got to borrow money in this country and use history as your guide, and that should tell you that count on somewhere between 5 and 7%. That's the historic average interest rate in Australia. And just if you perhaps don't think I'm broadcasting to you at the moment from a real garage, someone's backing out a car. It's proof. Anyway, the journalists wouldn't know anything about interest rates. I mean, they wouldn't be able to remember the interest rates in the Keating days of 18% for a home loan and 22% for a business loan. God knows how we survived that. Now, Tony Woods, I've talked to Tony many times when I was at 5DN and then later on at 588. Tony Woods, he's a very interesting character. He is from the left-leaning Grattan Institute. Odd to find them coming out and saying things that are not exactly supportive of the Labor government. But anyway, they did. Tony Woods has sounded a chilling warning, particularly coming up to winter, when we all like to be warm, a chilling warning that the government has not thought through its manic determination to close down our coal-fired power stations. The last of them will disappear within 7 to 10 years. The reason they'll disappear is that the people who operate the coal-fired power stations realise that the government wants to get rid of them. Nobody's going to put in dollars to maintain them or to replace them when you can see what's up against you from Canberra. That's why they will disappear. Most of our power, day to day, is supplied by coal. Don't let them lie to you. The Grattan Institute says that we are clearly in danger of being caught flat-footed. No reliable base load power. How could any responsible government be actively involved in this dangerous miscalculation? They're putting the whole country at risk because of their ideology. You know, I've often said it to you, and I'll say it again, it's worth repeating. Along with the various oaths that people entering Parliament take, I reckon there should be another one. It's like the one that doctors take. The oath that simply says, do no harm. Do no harm. They released the radio ratings, you know that. Some people, of course, would rather they didn't. But they don't release the TV ratings. I really wonder why. I don't understand that. I think there'd be passing interest when there's so much money involved. I was watching that movie, speaking of television, I was watching that movie Midway. Have you seen that, Pete?
Yes, yeah.
I think that's one of the best war movies. You know, you can count them on the palm of your hand. Hacksaw Ridge, which we were talking about the other week. Pearl Harbor.
Saving Private Ryan, I thought.
Saving Private Ryan. Oh, God, that was a classic. Saving Private Ryan. Pearl Harbor was a great movie. Dunkirk. The latest, because there have been several movies made about Dunkirk, the evacuation of Dunkirk. But the latest one was visually, emotionally, very, very impactful, if I can use that word. But anyway, I was watching Midway. The story, basically, the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor, and Midway was a few days or perhaps a week later, or I'm not exactly sure of the timing, but it was fairly close. The Japanese took advantage of America sleeping soundly, failing to understand, realizing the threat and the danger that was Japan. And while I was watching this movie, it was pretty horrific. I don't know how much of it was special effects and how much of it was just incredibly good trick photography and dangerous flying. But I thought about Anzac Day and what enemies might think of us today. Lazy, fat, sports crazy, divided, distracted, with a whole bunch of activists, demonstrators, people demonstrating for different issues, arguing, protesting, distracting, no sense of national direction or pride. If I was an enemy of Australia, or a potential enemy of Australia, I would be rubbing my hands together. I would think, what a wonderful opportunity. These guys are complacent. apathetic, with a leadership who doesn't understand. It's obsessed, the leadership, with things like climate change, ideology, Aboriginal issues, wokeism. I'm not sure that our armed forces are any more prepared than our population or our politicians, who of course live in their own little bubble called Canberra, driven, as I say, by ideology instead of pragmatism, patriotism, nationalism and common sense. Don't see a lot of that around Canberra, I wouldn't think. As it says in the Bible, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We must be careful of so many different things.
Jeremy, I was just wondering whether I might tack that song of mine on at the end of the, you know, the I Don't Stand Alone?
Yeah, I'd love you to.
Yeah, I'll tack that on at the end, because it's sort
yeah, no, do that. That's a great song.
Yeah.
Have you had that released?
No.
But you do it when you're busking, or you're doing it when you're...
No, not really. No, it's there. It's there in case something bad happens, then I might release it.
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. Yeah. We've got to be careful of immigration, along with a whole lot of other things. As all countries should be careful of immigration. The very tolerance that we pride ourselves upon can become a weapon to be used against us. And we see it, and we see it, and we see it. Media's not allowed to talk about it. In polite society, we don't comment on it, but it's there. The very tolerance we pride ourselves upon. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. I'm not saying people should always agree with each other. But when society is so distracted and torn by causes and issues and arguments, climate change, the Palestinians, domestic violence, misogyny, a lot of these things really don't have a lot to do with the business of being an Australian. They are concerns, but they must never be allowed to be distractions. Our freedoms, our history, we must come to the history too. It's an interesting point. Teachers for Palestine. I'd never heard of them before. Teachers for Palestine. They put out a media release here saying that we shouldn't celebrate, commemorate Anzac Day. I'll quote, I think I'm pretty accurate in remembering what they said. We will not be glorifying Australia's military history. We will not be glorifying Australia's military history? They actually want it to be banned, of course, Anzac Day, and probably our military history. These clowns, I guess, teachers for Palestine, I guess they must be teachers. These are in charge of our children. Can you imagine what indoctrination goes on in those classrooms? Being teachers, you would think they would know a bit about history. Palestine. Teachers for Palestine. Palestine was originally called Judea. You know that. The Romans called it Judea, the land of the Jews. No one, I understand, in the Islamic world wants these people, the Palestinians. Why, I don't know. They are all of, I'm assuming, very similar cultures. These protesters are Victorian teachers, I understand. Of course, there would be people like these teachers everywhere in the world, not just Victoria. Why do we tolerate such rubbish? Probably because we don't know about it till they break cover and start putting out media releases. From the rivers to the sea. What was the slogan? From the rivers to the sea, Palestine will be free. This is the chant. They were running around screaming this. From the rivers to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, if you look at most Islamic countries, would you call them free? I'm thinking Afghanistan, I'm thinking Pakistan, I'm thinking Iran, Iraq. You could be forgiven for thinking it's not Christianity or the West or Israel that enslaves people, it is Islam. Are they, I ask the question, are they inclusive and tolerant? I don't. Well, I think that is for each of us to answer, isn't it? But the lefties are dangerous. They really are. And many are drawn, of course, to the teaching profession. I believe, cynically, that it's because they want to get their hands on our children, and as early as possible. And if you can control education, and you can control the media, as has happened at the ABC, you've got what you want. A steady, slow takeover of an apathetic, complacent society. I don't know. I don't know. Might like to talk to me about it on Friday around the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com. I don't know if you know Bob Day. Bob Day was a very successful industrialist. He set up a great many building companies in South Australia, decided that he wanted to have well, he cared about a lot of issues. I think he stood for the Liberal Party, and I think he then started up the Family First Party. He ended up being a senator. He's a very, very interesting man with a lot of interesting ideas. He's a special guest on Friday. And Ian Plimer too is going to come by, because he only lives just up the hill. He's a very welcome guest at my dining room table, I can tell you. The federal government has announced that it will spend, that of course means we will spend, hundreds of millions of dollars on a national gun register. Now, a national gun register. I don't know. We have the tightest gun laws in the world, probably in history. The police know exactly what guns are registered, because simply you can't buy a gun without the knowledge and the permission of the police. They have to give you a permission to purchase, unless of course you're a crook and you don't bother about all that stuff. You see, the police know exactly what guns have been purchased and by whom and for what reason, because you have to have a reason, and where they're stored, and that is in every state and territory in Australia. Now hang on, the federal government is going to put $160 million into creating our money, into creating a national register. Why not just exchange and collect the information you already have? It would cost nothing. You know, you could do a Zoom thing, or you could just connect up the computers or something, or talk to each other. The government just wants to spend money. They're out of control. Just get the authorities to talk to each other. Doesn't cost anything to talk. But the big problem is always going to be the criminals, the crooks. The bad guys are the problem. And people, of course, who have a problem, a mental problem. People who just ignore the law are above the law. Laws control law-abiding people. Or does this government think that the Crims will trot along and register their firearms? Do you really think that? It's quite extraordinary. I don't know how much time I've got, Pete.
Well, I've got a few more minutes.
All right, because I've got some dates to do as well.
Yeah.
The ABC had a go at Pine Gap the other day. Make no mistake, the lefties have done this over the years many, many times. Pine Gap is an absolute anathema to them. Pine Gap is an installation that oversees the security and the safety of the free world. And we all know the dangers of terrorism and 1,000 other things that have to be. We have to have a way of seeing over the horizon. And this Pine Gap installation does exactly that. What is it that these idiots are afraid of, are suspicious of? The Americans are our allies, right? Well, to me, they are our allies. I remember Bob Hawke. Bob Hawke was, I wouldn't say suspicious of Pine Gap, but I remember talking to him about it at times because it was one of those issues of the left. You know, they regarded it as a mystery. Well, Bob Hawke was 100% behind the Pine Gap installation. I remember back in '83, with pressure from the left, he asked for and was given a tour of Pine Gap. He came back, told the people, shut up. There wasn't a problem. Now, of course, they're back. I mean the lefties. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, happy birthday if you're having a birthday. Happy wedding anniversary. I must tell you also, very quickly, that our two great sponsors remain with us, both on our Wednesday podcast and posting on Facebook, and, of course, around the dining room table. If you have a painting that you would like Jim Elder to have a look at, evaluate, appraise, he would be delighted. And if you're impressed with the money that you might make from the sale of that painting, he'd be very happy, I'm sure, to put it in his upcoming auction. He has about 3 or sometimes 4 a year. And he's always looking for fine paintings to include. And they're sold, of course, because people follow Jim Elder from Elder Fine Art all around the world. You can call Jim at Elder Fine Art on 8267 2869. And you'll find that wonderful gallery. If you drop in, it's on Melbourne Street. And it is, no, I don't have the listing here for the next auction. But it's a beautiful gallery on Melbourne Street, North Adelaide. You'd just love it. You really would. And our other sponsor, of course, is the Rising Sun Inn. Grant, have a talk to him if you're thinking about a romantic dinner for two or a celebration of any kind. It could be a business function. It could be, in fact, a wedding reception. The Rising Sun is one of the great historic, I won't call it a pub. Well, Grant calls it an inn. It was built in 1845, handmade bricks, open fires, lots of beautiful atmosphere. Have a talk to Grant. Lunch and dinner, and of course a bar up against which you can lean and have a fantastic glass of wine. Just lovely. The Rising Sun Inn. It's on Bridge Street at Kensington, just off Kensington Road, very close to the city. Their telephone number is 8333 0721. One of our very valued sponsors. Now, I can tell you that Batman, God, Pete, Batman's 85 years old. Yes, Batman is 85 years old. And a dear friend of mine from the old 588 days, Nick Nolan, is having a birthday. I'm not sure how old Nick is. The first patent is issued for a shaving mug. Golly, to Thomas Hughes. in America on this day in 1860. And on this day, the Empire State Building opened, the then tallest building in the world. Took 7 million man-hours to complete, 102 floors, 1,449 feet. It was built, well, it was opened in 1931, but it was being built at the height of the Depression, and it took them 1 year, just 1 year, to build the Empire State Building. And I think it's about, apart from the Twin Towers, funnily enough, the Twin Towers built by the same architect. Twin Towers, of course, suffered the 9/11 disaster, but there was an aeroplane that crashed into the Empire State Building. It was about, I don't know, it came out of the fog or something. It got lost and just flew into the side of the Empire State Building. It didn't really shake the building. It was a twin-engine passenger plane. You can look that up. That's an interesting piece of history. Glenn Ford was born in Quebec in 1916. Calamity Jane is having a birthday. Sir Frank Packer died. I don't know how old he was, but it was 1974. Haig's Chocolates, their first chocolate shop, opened at 34 King William Street in Adelaide, 1915. Would you believe it? 1915. Golly. The first public flushing toilets.
New York.
Okay. 1851. Monkey closets were called. They were called monkey closets. Unveiled by George Jennings as part of the Great Exhibition at Hyde Park, London, costing 1 penny. I guess that's where it came. That's where you got to spend a penny.
Yeah.
Good. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. 1840, penny black, the world's first adhesive postage stamp, was issued by Great Britain. The first British airliner to serve a cooked meal. Imperial Airways, 1927. Wow. King of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, 32, weds actress Priscilla at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. She was 21, he was 32. 1967 was the year. He died just 10 years later. Rita Coolidge was born. I liked Rita Coolidge. Born in 1945. We're the same age. Huh? The Boston Newsletter publishes the first newspaper advertisement in the history of the world back on this day in 1704. Now, why doesn't it tell me what it was an ad for? That could be useful. And a sad one, 3 times world Formula One driving champion Ayrton Senna of Brazil is killed in a 309-kilometre crash while leading the San Marino Grand Prix in Italy. Oh, and Citizen Kane, directed by Orson Welles and starring Orson Welles and Joseph Cotton, premieres at the Palace Theatre in New York City in 1941 and made movie history because even today it is regarded by many as the best movie ever made. I don't know. I ain't no authority. Now, thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. Pete's got a great song for you, and I will look forward to your company at the dining room table. JeremyCordeau.com. Interesting guests and conversation, phone calls, music, whatever happens, happens. And it doesn't have to stay in the dining room either. JeremyCordeau.com, 9 o'clock till 12. I'll see you then. I'm Jeremy Cordeau, Peter Clayton behind the camera. Believe in yourself, and we'll see you next Wednesday for another Court of Public Opinion.
In 1788, they arrived in Botany Bay, 1,044 under sail, looking for a better way. The first Australians had lived here for 40,000 years. They'd never known invasion, and so they held no fears. The British arrived with their guns and a belief in a holy right. No place for the dreaming, nor an ancient way of life. The British invasion was done, and the blacks had lost their land. It happened in a few short years, with no means to make a stand. Isolated 40,000 years they could never have repaired. The war was won by the British, with never a war declared. This is Australia, this is my home, and to those who would defeat us, I don't stand alone. 2 centuries have passed now, with history to repeat. An invasion coming from the people of the Middle East. They're arriving in their thousands, traveling 2 by 2, imposing beliefs on Australians who know not what to do. Once again the belief in a holy right being the spur for a people of religion committed to rule the world. One lesson learned from history is we've learned nothing at all. How many times through the ages have we seen nations fall? Our freedom and our culture will come to an end unless we see what others couldn't, and we stand and defend. This is Australia, this is my home, and to those who would defeat us, I don't stand alone. I don't judge a man by the color of his skin, but I do fear the fanatic with his will to win. To be branded a racist just to have my say, if that is so, then it's a price I'll have to pay.